Thank you everybody for being here. We're really excited to host this first virtual webinar series about bringing the farm to school. We have a couple partners that are involved in this project. The Kentucky Farm to School Network is a coalition of agencies, organizations, and individuals that are passionate about farm to school. And this webinar series is part of the work of the network. The organizations that you see down the bottom are the ones that are presenting over the next few days. And to give you kind of an overview of what the next 3 days will look like. So tonight, well, every night we're going to be meeting until Thursday night from 6:30 to 8:30 Eastern time. And you should be able to use the same Zoom information for each day. Tonight we'll be going over the introduction about the power of farm to school and module 1 of the Bringing the Farm to School webinar series. Tomorrow we'll get into selling to school markets and product development. And then Thursday we'll wrap it up with talking about growing for schools and creating your action plan to actually sell to the schools. So today I'm going to be presenting the introduction. My name is Mackenzie Fox and I work for the Kentucky Horticulture Council. We are a member of the Kentucky Farm to School Network. And I'm going to present about the introduction, which is the power of farm to school. So to give you all a little bit of an overview of this educational programming, the Bringing the Farm to School Producer Training Program was actually developed by the National Farm to School Network. And their goal for the program was to help all agricultural producers build their capacity to launch or expand efforts to market to schools. Therefore, supporting producers in diversifying their business while increasing farm to school activity in schools and communities across the nation. And so there's a couple objectives for this program, which hopefully you all will feel confident in by the end of these 3 days. So we want to increase your knowledge and understanding of farm to school programs, increase participation in farm to school activities, and increase the amount of local foods that producers sell to schools. So if you were signed up this morning, you should have gotten an email from me this morning about the different parts of the training, but also I included in there our training survey. And so the National Farm to School Network asks that we do this pre-survey that they will use to then evaluate the curriculum. So first, they do ask that we sign in through their virtual Google form. So I'm going to drop that in the chat and you all can take a moment to click on that and fill that in. I think it's really just asking your name and maybe your email. And then after you do that, if you have not already done the pre-survey, I'm going to drop that in the chat as well. But we're not going to spend a ton of time on it. So if you have not done it yet, which it is totally optional, if you haven't done it yet, you can just fill it out while I'm going through the PowerPoint. And as I'm presenting, please feel free to type any of your questions in the chat. You don't have to wait until the end or anything like that. Just go ahead and type it in the chat and I'll make sure to answer them. And hopefully many of your questions will be answered over the next 3 days because the idea behind this training is really to prepare you as much as possible for selling to schools and answer any questions that you do have about doing that. Okay, so our learning objectives for today, for the introduction, is to gain an understanding of what farm to school is and how it can benefit your business, identify motivations for selling to schools and how your farm goals align, and learn about action planning as a tool for meeting farm to school goals. So we're going to do a quick icebreaker. We're not going to answer all of these questions, but if you haven't already typed in the chat, please put in your location and what you grow, raise, sell, and or produce, why you're interested in farm to school. And if you want to get even more points, go ahead and type in why you're interested in farm to school or what would be the greatest benefit to your business. So I'm going to give you all just a minute or two to do that before we move on. All right, so I like the answers that I see coming in. So David says more money, which of course, this is an alternative market for sales. And so it is hopefully going to help you generate more money for your farm. And Rose said selling hydroponic grown greens to schools would diversify our customer base. So kind of the same motivations. And you all can keep typing in your answers as I move on to the next slide. So we're going to go a little bit over what is farm to school, because probably many of you think of farm to school and you immediately think of the procurement piece, which is the local food being served in the cafeteria. And I think that's what a lot of people think of when you immediately hear farm to school, but there's other elements that are also important and kind of tie together all of the pieces. And so we say that there's three core elements of farm to school. One is education, the second is procurement, and the third is school gardens. And again, procurement is just a word that we use for the purchasing of food. And it's a word that if you work with food service directors, you'll probably hear them talk about pretty frequently. That's the language that they use. And so it's good for you to know as well. And of course, education, that can be a lot of different things. That can be agriculture education, food, health, or nutrition education. It might be an in-class experience or maybe even a visit to a farm. So why local food and school meals? And I think you all kind of already answered some of these things with your answers about why you are interested in farm to school. So of course, schools buying locally supports local farmers, businesses, and local economies. So instead of that money getting sent off to another state or even country, that money that the schools are bringing in to purchase food is going back into our local economy. Another motivation for serving local food in schools is that it has actually been shown to increase school meal quality and program participation. So as we'll learn throughout the next few days, participation of students in school meals is really important, especially in schools in Kentucky that most of the students eat for free. And the reason why it's so important is that food service staff or the food service program is reimbursed based upon the participation. So they're based upon the number of students that eat their meals. And so, of course, food service directors want to increase their participation and have a high participation so that they get the reimbursements that they need to keep their program running. Another reason why you might be interested in local food and school meals is that you are interested in the kids side of things. So kids, when they try new fruits and vegetables, then they might be more likely to eat those fruits and vegetables at home, or potentially even support you at the farmer's market and purchase some of those fruits and vegetables. And then the last reason why people might be interested in local food and school meals, and of course, this really is not all encompassing, these are just some of the reasons why, is that it supports school wellness policies and broader school board priorities. And pretty much every school, as far as I understand, has a wellness policy, and having a program like Farm to School or purchasing local foods supports those policies. So we wanted to show you all just a couple examples of farm to school activities that took place in the state of Kentucky in the last few years. And so schools can promote farm to school activities in a lot of different ways. So sometimes it might be that, like in this case, you can see on the right, that Fayette County was serving locally grown apples from Reed's Orchard. So it might be something like that in the cafeteria where they have a poster and they promote that they're serving those locally grown apples. And oftentimes that will increase participation by students because it's really exciting and it's something new. And then on the left, you can see this is Franklin Independent Schools, and they really took kind of like a whole school outlook towards their farm to school programming. So they got the students involved in shucking the corn and preparing it because, as we all know, that's pretty intense labor, and the food service staff at the school were not able to do that. But involving the kids was a great way to bring in that education piece. And then other ways that schools will sometimes promote farm to school activities include farmers markets that take place on the school grounds, or sometimes schools will serve as a drop site for CSA programs. Other things could be special events like fundraisers where they are selling local food or harvest community dinners. And then, of course, promoting their programming through newsletters, social media, and community announcements. So there's a lot of different ways that schools can celebrate farm to school, and not every farm to school program will look exactly the same. So you might be thinking, well, how is this going to benefit me? How is selling local food or participating in these programs going to benefit my farm? And there's a lot of different ways that farm to school benefits our producers. So of course, we already talked about the economic development piece, that when that money is being invested in their own local economy rather than being shipped off to another state or country. From the public health aspect, it's interesting that farm to school activities actually increase students' consumption of fruits and vegetables. You might be interested in the education piece of things, where you see importance in our kids eating good food and knowing where their food comes from. From the environmental aspect, the transportation to get local food to the school is of course going to be significantly less than it would be to transfer it all the way from California or Mexico. So on that side of things, that's great for the environment too. And then from the community engagement side of things, farmers are used to talking to people, and many farmers like to do that, like at the farmers market. This is just another way to engage with your community, and it's building lifelong supporters of your farm and of local food in general. And so here's just some pictures of farmers working with kids through farm to school efforts. To reiterate, you might be benefiting directly from farm to school activities through increased sales, whether you're working with new school markets or expanding product offerings, or you might be benefiting indirectly. So maybe you're marketing to students and families through your CSA or farm visits, or promoting your program by partnering with the community at farmers markets, grocery stores, or restaurants. So you can build off of farm to school successes to help grow your brand. So, everybody likes to see kids eating good, healthy food. This is a way to promote your farm as well. And so we have a quote from one of our farmers who is actually participating this evening. And his name is David Neville from Capstone Farms. And he says that he sells farm to school because of the ability to deal with one customer, although it may be a difficult customer, and to go from selling one case to hundreds of cases or 450 cases. And if you were following in the chat, David mentioned that he sells hot dogs and a healthier version of hot dogs called school dogs, and is looking to move into fresh produce also. So that's what he's referencing there. And then another quote from a farmer, one of the producers said that a school contract helped me leverage a USDA grant for cold storage facilities or a loan from the bank. So having that alternative market helped this farmer get a grant to do even more and maybe outside of the farm to school market. And another farmer said that working with the school's distributor helped me get on their vendor list and sell additional products through them. So maybe you establish a relationship with the vendor that the schools are already using, and then you have the opportunity to sell through that mainline distributor. Another farmer said that they met a school board member or legislator at a farm to school fall harvest event, and cafeteria-based promotion helped increase my sales at the farmers market. So this is going back to that idea that I mentioned before, that you're building these lifelong supporters of your farm. So students and parents, they identified the brand because the kids had been eating it in the school, and so at the farmers market, they wanted to continue to support that farmer. So I think I have to change my audio here real quick, but I wanted to share this video of one of our farmers in the state that participates pretty heavily in farm to school activities. Can you all hear that? Is it coming through your computers too? Can somebody give me a thumbs up or yes in the chat or something?
All the time, and they weren't able to over the last couple of years. So we are glad this is our very first school tour of the year. We are partnering today with the health department, the extension office, and several other organizations in Allen County, which has made the tour go really well. They have gone around the farm with Nathan. They've got to see the animals. They've got to see the different vegetables and fruits that we grow. And then now what we're doing is they're working in groups. And they are learning about nutritious grains, fruits and vegetables. They're doing activities with the different professionals we have from the other organizations. They're also getting snacks, so they're making their own pasta salad with different vegetables that they're putting in there. And then after they get done doing that, we're going to let them just kind of run around on the farm and play and have fun, and then also be able to ask any questions that they have. One of the things that we have every single time we have a group of kids out is we realize that how few of them are being exposed to farms or even backyard gardens anymore. And so letting them come here and see where the food is grown, it helps gain interest. And in particular, we do a weekly fruit vegetable snack with them after their daycare center. And so for them to come here and see it on the farm, it increases their likelihood of wanting to try that fruit vegetable. I've never seen Christmas pumpkins. I like Amy, and my favorite animal is a cat. My favorite part of the farm was when we got to eat the tomatoes and go to the farm. I like seeing the green peppers and tomatoes. Cucumbers. I like tomatoes. My favorite part of the farm was the tomatoes. My favorite part of the farm was seeing the horse and the cow. My favorite part was when we saw the water tanks. My favorite part was when we learned from looking at the fish. My favorite part was when I gave Rookie feet and feeder.
Okay. So I like to show that video because it shows how much the kids love it, and I think it's just really great that they're making that connection from the food that they are getting served at their daycare to then during the summer going and actually seeing it grow. And so you have the potential to do that, and you don't necessarily have to do farm tours. You could really just sell to schools. It's really up to you, but the kids definitely get a lot out of it when they bring in that educational piece. So moving on, I want us to think about how our farm goals support farm to school sales. So probably many of you have some sort of business plan in place, or you at least have an idea of what you want for your business as a farmer. And there might be different aspects that affect your farm goals and might then thus affect your farm to school sales. So the pieces that might affect your farm planning and school sales might be your lifestyle and your farm goals. So like if you work another job, it might be difficult to sell into schools because of delivery. Um, the community piece. So if community is a really important piece for your farm and building those connections with kids and adults and building your supporters, if that's a really important piece for you, that might impact how you look at your farm and your school sales. And then, of course, marketing and profitability. So it's important, you know, this is an important piece because you can't do any sort of sale really without making money from it. You know, you have to be able to cover your expenses and your labor. And so that's something that you should definitely be thinking about. And we'll talk about it too throughout this series. And then, of course, your production capabilities. So, do you have the ability to grow more? Like maybe you already sell everything that you grow and you don't have any more space, or you don't have enough time or labor to dedicate to growing more, then maybe that's not right for you, or maybe you decide to maybe stop selling in one market and rather sell to schools. So those are just important things to think about. And as we're going through the different series of webinars or of modules, I just want you to always come back to, is farm to school right for me? And if it's not, that's okay too. Ultimately, you have to do what's right for your farm. So with that, so I asked you all to print out our action plan, and let me drop it in the chat if you were not able to print it out. So our action planning guide that the National Farm to School Network put together. So if you were able to print that out, we're going to do an activity. If you were unable to print it out, you can still do the activity just on a little bit different way. So this little web activity that we're going to do, well, now it's trying to blur me out, but you can see it on the screen anyways. So the web activity that we're going to do, you're going to rate your skills and abilities in these different areas from 1 to 5. And so 1 is going to say that you feel like you have little to no skills or resources in this area. And 5 indicates that you have strong skills and ample resources in that area. And so 1 is going to be, of course, closest to the center. And then 5 will be the farthest away from the center. And so go ahead, we're going to take like 5 or 10 minutes. So with the one that you have, which should be on page 2 of the action plan, it should be a blank one. Go ahead and read these different statements and rate yourself from 1 to 5. And then that will help you see what areas you might need a little bit more help in regarding farm to school. So we're going to take some time to do that, and feel free to drop any questions in the chat while we're doing that. All right, so while you all are finishing that up, would anybody be willing to share in what areas you feel really confident in that you have a 5 versus what areas you maybe have a 1? So you can unmute yourself or share in the chat. Nobody wants to share, huh? Well, that's all right. If you were able to do it, you can see for yourself maybe what areas you need a little bit more help in and which ones you feel really confident in. And the great thing is, if you're coming into this training and don't have maybe you have lots of ones and twos, that is what this training is all about. So these are all goals of the training. So hopefully by the end of this, all of your ones or twos will move to fives. And if that is the case, then we have accomplished our goal for the training. And Rose says she would be more than two, mostly ones. And that's exactly why we're doing this training. So hopefully by the end, like I said, you'll be able to understand all of these different concepts and move all of your ones or twos to a 5. And so at the end of this training, hopefully you'll be able to look back and appreciate how much you learned. And so with that, I want to introduce a piece of this training that might be a little bit different from typical webinars that you're used to, and that is action planning. And so we hope that you will leave this training with a school business action plan for accessing school markets. So the action plan will provide you with tangible next steps for selling to schools that reflect farm goal-based decision making. So the school business action planning guide is what you all printed off, and we will revisit it and fill it in at the end of each module. And so this is our first step of our action plan. So I want you all to take another minute, and now we're looking on page 3 of the action plan. And I want you to go ahead and do the top part that says benefits of farm to school that interest you. So go ahead and check all that apply. So check all of the pieces, all of those little checkbox that are really appeal to you about the benefits of farming to school. And while you're doing that, I want to kind of talk a little bit about why we're doing this. So, an action plan is a tool that will help support you in achieving your short term and long term goals of selling to schools. So, there's different things that we talked about earlier that you have to consider when you're developing your action plan for farm to school. So, your motivations, your short and long term goals for your farm, and the bottom line that you need to achieve, the value that you can provide to schools, and the steps that you need to take in the next couple of months in order to accomplish those things. And so we'll talk a lot about SMART goals with this action plan. And SMART goals are goals that are specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time bound. And so as we work through our webinar series, you will get to create your next steps, which we hope will be SMART. And Austin, if you were registered earlier today, I sent out the handouts via email. If you don't have that, just type in the chat and I'll send it to you after this, after I finish up with this intro, and make sure that you get that. So as I was saying, throughout this training program, you're going to be completing this action plan that you will leave the training with. And each module will address barriers and ways that we can support you in developing the plan that you need to take. At the end of this training, you'll have the opportunity to revise and refine your plan and think about the whole picture of your farm to school sales. And with that, we're going to take a little bit of a break, about 5 minutes, and then we'll be coming back here for module 1. You can take this time to start thinking through these questions that they have up here. Well, anyways, on that page that we were filling out about the benefits of farm to school that interest you, you can take this time to write down the answers to these different questions. And then we'll be back here about 7:10 for module 1, and we'll be hearing from somebody that actually works in school food service. And so with that, there's my contact information, and I'll see you all in about 5 minutes.